Today, I'm going to be discussing the pros and cons of buying a home versus renting a home. My name is Shannon Gramling, and I'm a real estate agent in New York City and in New Jersey, so if I can help you out with anything, please let me know. I do want to preface this by saying that there's no right choice in either buying or renting. It's totally up to you, but there are some things that you should keep in mind when you are trying to make that decision. So I'm going to be discussing the pros and cons, and then at the end of the video, I'm going to be sharing some questions for you in order to help you make that decision. Let's start with buying a home. One of the major advantages to buying a home is that you are building equity. You're building long-term wealth. If you buy with a mortgage and you're making payments on the home, of course, a portion of that is going to interest, but then the rest of it is going to equity. So you're pretty much putting that money back into your pocket. If you pay all cash for a home, you don't have any interest. So you have 100% equity in your home. Another great benefit of building equity in your home is that later on you might want to upsize your home. And if you already own one and you're building equity there, you can use that to then upsize later on when it's time. Another benefit of owning your home versus renting a home is that you have more flexibility when it comes to what you want to do with the home. And what I mean is, if you want to paint the house a certain color or paint every room different colors, if you own the home, you can do that. If you want to do a complete remodel of your kitchen or your bathroom and make it look modern and brand new, you can do that when you own a home, but not when you rent. Of course, if you buy a home that is in a homeowners association, you do have to abide by the rules that they have in place, and sometimes you might have to get permission to do certain renovations, but at least you can still do renovations. Another great benefit of owning your home versus renting is that you get more tax benefits, such as being able to deduct your interest that you pay on your mortgage, as well as deducting your state and local property taxes. Owning a home is also a hedge against inflation, so when rents go up, you don't have to worry about paying more monthly on a home that you own. Whereas if you rent, then you have to worry about those rent increases. Lastly, owning a home gives you stability, especially if you have a family that you're raising. You might have kids who are going to the schools that are in the neighborhood. So if you own that home, you have stability there. You don't have to worry about having to move for something like a rent increase or anything like that. Now, here are a couple of cons, or just a couple of things to keep in mind if you are buying a home versus renting. And one is that you do have to come up with that initial down payment and your closing cost when you buy a home versus renting. One thing to note is that you don't have to put down 20% of the purchase price to buy a home. You can put down as little as 3.5% with an FHA loan and even 0% with a VA loan. So if you don't have 20% saved up for a home, or you don't want to put down 20%, talk to your mortgage lender about the options that you have to put down less than that. Another thing to keep in mind when you do own a home is that you are responsible for all maintenance and repairs of it. So you have to make sure you save up money for that and keep that set to the side, especially for any emergencies that come up. Now let's talk about renting. With renting, one of the benefits that you have is the flexibility to be able to move to different locations or even try different property types. Maybe you want to try to live in like a downtown area of a city for a couple of years, and then later on see how it is to live in a house in the suburbs for a couple of years. Or maybe you want to try living in a high-rise condo for a few years and then later on try a single family. With renting, you get more of that flexibility. Also, with renting, you don't have to come up with a down payment or closing cost. So it saves you all of that money up front. One great benefit that many people love with renting is that you don't have to worry about maintenance and repairs, because most of the time when you rent, the landlord is responsible for all of that. So let's say your dishwasher stops working or any other appliance stops working. Just call up your landlord and they're responsible for getting that fixed for you or replacing it, so you don't have to pay for that. Or let's say there's a leak and you don't know where it's coming from. Your landlord is responsible for hiring the right person to come and take a look, figure out where that leak is coming from, stop it at the source, and get the repair made. So you don't have to deal with that. Another benefit of renting a home versus buying a home is that since you don't have that initial upfront payment for your down payment and closing costs, you can use that money from your savings account to invest it instead. So maybe you want to invest that money into the stock market or even real estate. You can still buy real estate and not live in it. They can be investment properties for you. So that is another option to be able to still get those homeownership benefits, but not having to live in the home. Now for a few cons or things to keep in mind if you are going to rent versus buy. One is that you do have to think about rent increases, especially during times of inflation. Unless you live in a rent stabilized apartment or in any area where rent increases are capped, as market rents go up, your landlord can raise your rent tremendously. I've even seen rent increases of 30 to 40% recently, and that causes some people to have to move out of their home into a different one. So if you don't want to deal with any rent increases or risking getting priced out of your home, it could be a good idea to look into buying versus renting. Another drawback of renting is that you're not building equity in your home and you're not building that long-term wealth. However, as I mentioned before, if you rent the home that you live in and you're still buying investment properties, then you are still building equity there and you're building that long-term wealth. A couple of other things to keep in mind if you are renting is that the more you move, the more you're going to have to pay in moving costs. And movers, especially nowadays, are not cheap. And if you're not using movers, you're doing all of that physical labor yourself. And even if you are using movers, you're still packing and unpacking and spending time doing all of that for every move that you make. But again, if the pros outweigh the cons for you, then this still might make sense. And the last thing are broker fees. You don't have broker fees in every market, but in the markets that I work, New York City and in New Jersey, you do have broker fees for renting. And they can be expensive, especially in New York City. They can be as high as 15% of the annual. So that almost amounts to 2 months of rent payments just for the broker fee. And that isn't going into any kind of equity or anything. That is just to pay the broker for getting you the apartment or house, whatever it is that you're renting. Now, in order to determine whether renting or buying is the right decision for you, here are some questions to keep in mind and to answer to help you make that decision. One is, how long do you plan on staying in the home or the location that you're going to be renting or buying in? If you're thinking like 3 to 5 years, it could be a smart choice to buy versus rent, because then you'll have the time to allow the home to appreciate and even recuperate some of those initial costs that you had, such as your closing costs and your down payment. So 3 to 5 years, it could be a good choice to buy versus rent. Another question is, what are your finances like? Are you able to qualify for a mortgage based on your income that you make and any debts that you have, or your debt to income ratio? It's important to discuss this with a lender in order to help you make your decision on whether to buy or rent. Another question is, how is the housing market where you're looking to buy or rent? In some cities like New York City or San Francisco, it's very expensive to buy a home, especially when you account for those high monthly HOAs and even high taxes. So in some cases, it could be cheaper to rent versus buy in a city like that. Another question to ask yourself is, what kind of lifestyle do you want to live? Some people enjoy living in the brand new high-rise buildings that you see that have these great city views and have amenities such as pools, grills, fire pits, all of that stuff. If you're looking for something like that, many times it is cheaper to rent that versus buy. So keep that in mind based on the lifestyle that you want to live. And lastly, how's your job security? If you have a more stable job and more stable income, you might feel comfortable buying versus renting, because you know that in the long term you'll be able to make those payments, and again, those payments are building equity into your home. So those are some pros and cons, or some things to keep in mind when you are trying to decide whether you want to buy or rent your home. Again, my name is Shanan Gramling, and I'm a real estate agent in New York City and in New Jersey. So definitely reach out to me if I can help you out. And if you're looking to buy, rent, or sell a home outside of my markets, I'll refer you to an agent in my company in the market that you're looking in. If you found this video to be helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more, and I'll see you in the next one.